Before we begin on the ABLE and Your Benefits Roundtable, I'm going to go ahead and ask Lorena and Joel to bring them on, unmute, and show their video. I just wanted to be a friendly reminder for those who were unable to join the previous sessions. These are going to be recorded and available on our YouTube website, hopefully in the next week or so. And you can access that by visiting ableunited.com or going to youtube.com/ableunited to get all of our pre-recorded and previously recorded ABLE content. So talking about ABLE and your benefits. This is probably one of the most frequent questions we receive is how ABLE accounts work together with Medicaid and Social Security benefits. I have the pleasure with me, joining me today is Lorena Fulcher, who is the Bureau Chief of Consumer Support at the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. Welcome, Lorena. And also we have Joel Hernandez, Public Affairs Specialist at the Social Security Administration. Thank you so much, Joel, for being here today.
Thank you.
All right. But before we really dive into this session, I'm going to throw up a quick poll to see how many of our attendees are currently receiving public benefits. So no supplemental security income, Medicaid, or maybe you're receiving some kind of other public benefit. I'll give everybody a few moments to answer this. Seeing those answers come in, this is great. Great participation. Give everybody a couple more seconds here. All right, we can end the poll here and share the results. So roughly 52% receiving SSI and 50% receiving Medicaid. So a good bulk of you are receiving some type of public benefit. And for those who are not, hopefully this will be informative as you may receive them or a loved one may receive them in the future. So just to get started, and I'm going to open up the floor to kind of set the foundation of what these different type of programs are here in the state of Florida. And we're going to start with you, Lorena. Can you give us a little bit of background on who the Agency for Persons with Disability is and the specific home and community-based waiver, the I-budget waiver that you all provide to Floridians? So Lorena, just tell us a little bit more.
Sure. Thank you for having us today. So the Florida legislature created the Agency for Persons with Disabilities to address the unique and significant challenges that individuals with developmental disabilities in Florida have. And so our agency assists individuals with developmental disabilities and their families in identifying their needs, and we provide supports and services to them. We serve as the central point for interagency coordination for individuals with developmental disabilities, receiving services from a lot of different agencies throughout Florida. So currently we have about 55,000 clients, and most of our clients, over 35,000, are served through a Medicaid program that's known as the I-budget waiver. And we actually have a waiting list for that Medicaid program with 23,000 people as well. So the I-budget waiver is a federal home and community-based Medicaid program. And the purpose is to provide services to delay or prevent institutionalization. So our agency, through that program, we offer an array of social, medical, behavioral, and therapeutic services to help people live, learn, and work in their communities.
That's great, and I will be diving into some more of those specifics later on, but I want to turn this over to Joel now. I know Social Security has a long history, so we won't go back to the beginning days. But can you just give us a little highlight of specifically two programs I know for ABLE we run into, are individuals receiving SSI or either adult benefits from their parents or SSDI. So can you tell us a little bit about SSI and SSDI?
Well, the most important thing about both programs is there's a main difference. How the programs are funded. SSI, we know that it's funded from the General Treasury Fund, and the SSDI is funded through the FICA tax or Self-Employment Contributions Act. Those two funds allow us to provide benefits when we're talking about SSDI, the actual Social Security Disability Insurance. We provide disability benefits, survivor benefits, retirement benefits to the number holders and the survivor families. In SSI, we are limited to the individual themselves. So we can pay benefits in SSI to a disabled individual, a blind individual, or a disabled child. Whereas in SSDI, we can pay benefits to the number holder and to dependents and survivors.
That's great. And so as we kind of dig in specifically on how these kind of public benefits work together and some of the requirements to be eligible for those, I know for ABLE, one of the key advantages is that individuals can save, and those funds generally do not count as a resource for Medicaid or supplemental security income. And so with that, I know Social Security had to kind of do basically an update and a whole section on their POMS manual or their program operations manual system. So Joel, going to you, can you tell us a little bit more about that POMS manual and shed some light on how it relates and how it references ABLE accounts?
Yeah, you touched on something very important. There's a difference also in how we become insured for the benefits. One is through work, the other one is based on income and resources, which is the SSI. So if you want to understand more about the Social Security policy, you can go into the POMS or Policy Operations Manual. It is the same set of policies that the employees at Social Security use to manage and to process the claims. There's a difference, and it's only because there's some internal and sensitive information that is not provided publicly, but the whole policy is available to any individual that wants to search for it. And if you would like to find the policy manual to learn more about the ABLE account, all you would have to do, you can go to our webpage, ssa.gov. On the bottom of the page, there's some resources, and you can see Policy Operations Manual System. If you click on it, it's going to have the whole policy of Social Security separated by sections. The section that talks about the ABLE accounts is SI 001130.740, Achieving a Better Life Experience for ABLE Accounts.
That's great. Thank you, Joel. Yeah, and I referenced that manual quite a bit, and I know it goes through updates occasionally as things kind of change or adjust or get settled. And it also provides some really concrete examples on how Social Security treats ABLE accounts, whether that be individuals on SSI that are surpassing $100,000 in resources, or the different types of qualified disability expenses. And I think, was it last year or the year before, there was an update to clarify, for example, food purchases isn't really tied to a housing expense when it comes out of an ABLE account. And as we said, ABLE accounts generally, just one of the great benefits is the tax-free growth that individuals can experience. And when they make a withdrawal to pay for a variety of qualified disability expenses. And it is unique in that it could be used for weekly or daily living expenses like groceries. It can be used for upcoming housing and doctor's appointments, or even same for computer, college, or even a new car. And so ABLE accounts allow that opportunity to save for a variety of expenditures. And it's good to know on expenses that are not used for qualified disability expenses. So giving the funds away, gambling, tobacco, those types of things, they may be subject to a penalty, and they may count as a resource for Social Security. And so, Joel, talking about housing related expenses, because that's one of those areas for SSI, and if somebody's using an ABLE account to pay for those type of expenditures, there's a little bit more rules. Can you give us an example, provide how an ABLE account can be used to pay for rent while you're on SSI?
Well, if you remember that any distribution from the able account would be considered as a resource. It wouldn't be considered as income. It would be considered as a resource. But as you explained, there's some qualified disability expenses that could exclude those distributions from being counted as a resource. So there's a list that you can go about. If you go into the policy manual, you said something that is very important. The policy provides examples for every qualified expense. It also provides the exclusions, the contributions, the distribution. If you go into the policy, it's going to provide a whole list of examples that would greatly assist individuals that are using the ABLE account or are thinking about using the ABLE account in the future. Now, the housing expenses differs from a regular SSI claim in that how the food expense is part of the housing expense in a regular SSI application. When we talk about the ABLE account, the food expense is not part of the housing expense. Now, from the list available in policy, there's some things that are qualified disability expenses, which is the rent, property taxes, rent, heating, fuel, gas, electricity, water, sewer. All of those are expenses that you could have an exclusion for when we're talking about a distribution from the ABLE account. Now, if you want to document, we will take your allegation as to why you're using it. If you're using it for a qualified housing expense, we will take the allegation. However, it is always beneficial to have evidence. And what evidence can you have? We're talking about mortgage, you can have an invoice, you can have a mortgage invoice. We're talking about property taxes, you can have the invoice that you get from the county, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's great. And it's important to know to keep those reasons on why an expense from an ABLE account should be a qualified disability expense. And I know specifically for Social Security, as long as it's, if you're paying for housing related expenses, it just has to be paid in the same month or have that ABLE account pay it directly. It's when an individual retains those funds past the end of the month, then it could be counted as a resource and impact somebody's SSI benefit. So that's a good point on just keeping those receipts and making sure you're using the account appropriately.
If you say that you're going to use the distribution to make a payment the following month and you retain it the following month, it will be counted as a resource against you. That is correct.
So yeah, thank you for that clarification. So let's switch us over to Lorena. I know the Medicaid I-budget waiver. It's has some names across the years. I know us both working in the past together, and it has this unique name. So tell us a little bit of like how a family when they say, okay, hey, congratulations, you're going to be on to the I-budget waiver. How does that work? What does it look like, and how do they go about selecting those services that Medicaid can provide through the I-budget waiver?
Sure, that's a great question. So everyone who is receiving I-budget waiver services has a case manager, and they're known as a waiver support coordinator. And so the support coordinator, they have a big responsibility because they're responsible for helping clients access services not only through our program, but through any other program, whether it be government funded, private, community. They are the person who helps the client access services. They also assist clients by helping them maintain their public benefits. So the waiver support coordinator helps our clients in applying for Medicaid, Social Security, and then maintaining those benefits when they're reviewed periodically as well.
That's great. So let's take a minute, just to make sure people understand okay, this may be the first time I'm hearing about either of these benefits and I want to apply. So Lorena, we'll start with you. If I'm an individual or a family member and we want to enroll our individual for the first time, where do we start?
Okay, well, our agency has local offices all around the state, and people can submit an application to one of our local offices. Our application is online as well as the contact information for our offices. So you could find that on our website at apdcares.org. One thing that is a little misleading about our agency is our name. It's called the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, but we serve people that have developmental disabilities. So the criteria for eligibility is a little more limited. It's people with intellectual disabilities, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, Prader-Willi syndrome, severe forms of autism, Phelan-McDermid syndrome, and there may be a few more on the list, but I think I hit the most high points there.
That's
so
great.
I would encourage you to check out our website for the application process.
That's awesome. Now, switching over to you, Joel, and I know it seems like every city in Florida has a Social Security office, but how does somebody, I'm interested in Social Security benefits, either I'm coming to that retirement age, or maybe my child might be, applicable for SSI benefits. Can you explain what that process, where to start?
Where to start? There's three options for any individual. First of all, you can call our 1-800 number, 1-800-772-1213. We have made it very user-friendly. If you want to apply online, there's a lot of benefits there. I encourage those that are joining us today to open a My SSA account. There's a lot of information. If you're not ready to file, there's information for you to educate yourself on how the process works and what your benefit will be in the future. However, if you are ready to file, you could file online, you could submit the application. The local servicing office will receive it and will process that application. Well, the other option is the face-to-face interview. However, right now, we're only providing face-to-face interview in limited critical situations. But those will be determined by the servicing office. So most important thing, online, open a My SSA account. There's a lot of information for you to educate yourselves, and also a lot of information to make a good decision as to when you want to file or not. Now, I want to add one more thing before I let you go. There's an office locator too. If you go to our website and you type the zip code of where you live, it's going to give you all the information of your local servicing office as well.
That's a great point. I do want to make a little plug in, because I know even, I'm nowhere, hopefully, knock on wood, near retirement anytime soon, and I have a long life, but I went ahead and created my Social Security account, and I get like annual kind of statement of saying, hey, this is what my benefits would be in the future, or if I became, have a disability where I can no longer work, what those benefits were worth. So even as somebody that's, at this point in life, don't see me using Social Security benefits, but I do get that kind of statement. So it's kind of cool to see how that all works together. So let's talk about the coverage, and I'll go over to Lorena real quick. So I know Medicaid waiver is pretty robust. It's a very robust set of services, ideally to keep individuals at home. But are there areas where they don't necessarily cover services or different types of expenditures?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that question. So it is a Medicaid program, and we do offer, about 25 different services, but there's a lot of different Medicaid coverage and limitations people have to meet. So you might have to be a certain age to get a certain service, or you might have to live in a certain type of setting. So the coverage is limited in that sense, even though there's a lot of service, where in contrast, what I'm hearing as you guys talk about the ABLE accounts is there's a lot more flexibility in what you can do. So you can augment what you're getting maybe through the iBudget waiver, et cetera.
That's good. That's important to know. So switching over to Joel, and that kind of certain questions. So I know SSI high level is really to help pay for kind of 3 to 4 main categories, right? Food, housing, kind of those basic, very basic living expenses. But what about SSDI? Are there restrictions on how individuals can use SSDI funding?
No, there are no restrictions on how you use your SSDI funding. Remember, it's not based on income, it's not based on resources. That is a benefit that is available to you because you work and you paid into the Social Security program.
And that's very important to know. So it is that earning benefits. And what's interesting, so we have people that are on SSDI, but they might also be on Medicaid. And I think that's where when you have that kind of lapse where SSDI doesn't count resources, Medicaid does. And so we see a lot of individuals that utilize an ABLE account to keep below that resource threshold for Medicaid so they can continue to keep Medicaid. And so their SSDI payment usually is a little bit more than an SSI payment. And so, they're in a spin down situation is what we used to call it. And now they can utilize an ABLE account and really, save those funds for something that they may actually need in the future, whether that be an emergency or not. And since we're kind of talking about work and SSDI being an earned benefit, we're going to switch over to kind of employment services. And I know APD, can you talk a little, Lorena, about employment services that specifically APD offers?
Yes, our agency is very committed to helping our clients work in competitive employment at or above minimum wage. And we do a lot of collaboration with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, as well as the Department of Economic Opportunity, to make sure that our clients get employment services when they want to work. A lot of times vocational rehabilitation helps people with disabilities get a job, and then our agency will provide follow-along services to help someone keep their job ongoing. And then sometimes we also assist people in job development as well. Part of employment is always considering public benefits when you're in a Medicaid program. So we try to make sure our providers can educate clients about how to work and maintain their public benefits at the same time.
Oh, I gotta hit unmute every once in a while. Okay, that's great. Now switching over to you, Joel, thinking about working, right? Because SSDI is an earned benefit, but really individuals aren't receiving SSDI until they receive a disability or might get straight Social Security if they're hitting the retirement age. But can you tell me kind of high level the rules for individuals that are looking to work and maybe they are receiving SSI or SSDI, the type of programs that Social Security offers to help those individuals become gainfully employed?
Oh, there's a difference, and it's a very marked difference. When we're talking about SSDI, strictly Social Security Disability Insurance, our definition for disability is a medical condition that prevents you from working substantially. Also, a medical condition that will last more than 12 months. Substantial gainful activity, that substantially, we define it by an amount. Every year an amount is established, right? If you are an individual that is found to be disabled because of a non-blind condition, the limit is $1,310 gross per month. If you are an individual that is found to be legally blind or a blind condition, the limit is $2,190 per month. So we want people to go and work, though we have a lot of work incentives available for a person that receives disability to go back to work. So we provide those limits to allow you to try yourself out in the market and see if you can keep a job and keep working while you have the disabling condition. As long as you are below those amounts, you're going to continue to receive your amounts. Difference from SSI. SSI, you remember that benefits like Title II, Social Security benefits are considered as income. So if you are above a certain amount on income, you're not going to be eligible to SSI. So when we look at an individual that has an ABLE account and is able to work, those contributions going into the ABLE account are going to be considered as income for the individual. They can go into the ABLE account, but on the side, we're going to consider them as income for the individual. So that's the main difference between the two programs.
And that's a good point you made. I'm glad you brought that up. I think one of the benefits, or one of the things people were hoping ABLE accounts did when they were first established, was the shelter earned income. That, hey, I could work more, put the entire amount in my ABLE account, and then Social Security is just going to kind of turn their head. But that's not the case. ABLE accounts really shelter resources. So earned income or some non-earned income, for example, child benefits somebody might receive from a divorce, for example, those types of funds, even directly deposited in ABLE account, would still count as either earned income or unearned income for Social Security purposes. So that's a good point to make. So I'm glad you did that. I'm going to go ahead and remind people, if you have questions, there is a Q&A box on the Zoom on the bottom there. That is the place where you would go to have your questions answered. And we see quite a few questions have come about, but that is the place you do it. And at this time, we're going to kind of transition to a Q&A portion. So I see this one. We're getting a lot of DAC questions, right? And that's, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Joel, but disabled adult children benefit, right? So this is the benefit of a parent's retiring, but they have an eligible child or adult child that may be able to withdraw on their parents' Social Security benefits. So can you explain a little bit about what exactly that is, and then how it works for an individual?
You remember when I was telling you about the difference between SSI and SSDI? SSI is for the individual, right? For a disabled child, those benefits are only for the disabled child. If it is a blind individual, the benefits are only for the blind individual. If it is a disabled individual, only for that individual. In SSDI, as the Social Security law progressed throughout the history, like you were saying at the beginning, as it progressed throughout the history, some benefits were added, and that those were meant to include dependents and survivors. So when we're talking about dependents, it could be an individual, like, for example, if I'm disabled or I am retired and I have a child that is under the age of 18, he could receive benefits on my record as a child. If he is over the age of 18 and still in high school, full-time student, he's going to be considered a student on my record. Now, if he hasn't graduated from high school, by 19 years and 2 months, that child is going to be removed from the record. Now, there's a difference if it's between a student or a dependent child. If it is a child that is disabled and is found to be disabled, just like you and I, if we were to file for disability, we're going to go through the disability determination services. They're going to make a decision. So if that child is found to be disabled prior to the age of 22, he's going to be considered a disabled adult child. And that could happen on a retirement record, it could happen on a disability record, and it could happen on a survivor record. The only difference is survival, disabled adult child, disabled adult child, but the basis is the same. It's a child that became disabled prior to the age of 22, meaning that child met our definition of disability prior to the age of 22.
And for my own edification and clarification, does it depend on the parent's age, right? Do they have to be at that retirement age threshold for a child to start receiving those benefits?
No, not when we're talking about a disabled adult child. We're talking about a disabled adult child. If I'm disabled and I have a child that is disabled prior to the age of 22, he's going to be eligible on my record. So if I'm disabled, most likely I began to receive benefits before the age of 62 for retirement.
Okay. That's great. That's great. Now I'll bring this question over to Lorena. I know this is a question I often receive when we're out talking about ABLE, and then iBudget comes up, and the question of okay, I'm either waiting on the wait list or I'm currently receiving services. And my support coordinator, that person that's helping me navigate. Now, individual, do they get assigned that, or do they have some kind of options in choosing a support coordinator to help them navigate iBudget?
It's a choice. When someone is receiving services, we give them a list of support coordinators in their local area that have availability, and then the individual and their family can choose any support coordinator that's available. And then also they can change support coordinators at any time. So if you're working with somebody and you feel somebody else will be a better fit, that change can be made at the request of the client.
Awesome. And I'm also assuming service as well, right? So if you're you're receiving, let's say, support employment services, or maybe you're receiving residential services in the form of group homes or something, and you want to change that, that's a possibility, correct?
Yes, one of the major premises of our waiver is choice, and so individuals have the flexibility to choose from enrolled providers, services, etc. We foster person-centered principles. And so support coordinators engage our clients and their families in person-centered planning, so they can really plan out what the individual desires for their life and future.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Lorena. And just, it's always good to have that kind of the eyesight, the hindsight of it's really directed choices, right? It's that whole focus on what is best for you and your family, and for that beneficiary, that individual with the disability. Switching back to you, Joel, I see this question. I hear this question a lot as well. It says, my son currently does not qualify of SSI because my husband and I make too much money. Mm-hmm. So we're presuming that they're under 18. Will he qualify once he turns 18? Or what does that process looks like for when your child becomes an adult or reaches that magical 18 number?
Yeah, correct. At the age of 18, he's going to be looked at as an adult. So we're going to look at his income and resources, his living arrangements, to determine whether he meets the SSI income and limit requirements. When he files at the age of 18, the parent's income is not going to count against him because it's not income that belongs to him. However, when we look at the living arrangements, we're going to determine whether or not he contributes into the household. But yes, you are correct. It's going to remove the parent's income, and it's going to make them eligible on income and resources. And we need to look at the disability as well.
And I like how you threw that in there, and I love that little nugget about the whole idea is you take into consideration the whole idea of their living arrangements, right? Because if they're still at home at 18, because remember, SSI benefits, one of the primary things is to pay for housing, so it could reduce that mm-hmm. benefit by a third, if I'm not mistaken. So that's yes. important to know. And while we have you, Joel, I got this question about stimulus funds, right? So pandemic occurred last year, and then they rolled out something that I know in my lifetime I haven't seen before, but these economic stimulus funds came in, and we got a lot of questions about how does this impact Social Security benefits? Does it count as a resource? So you can give us a little bit of high-level information on people receiving SSI benefits, and they receive stimulus funds. How does Social Security treat those, and what's the kind of the rules behind that?
Well, at this time, Social Security does not consider them as income. I would have to get back to you on where we stand right now, but in the beginning, they were not counted as income.
Great, and to add some language to that, what's interesting is it doesn't count as income, and I don't think they count it as a resource for the first year. So after a year, if they're still sitting there, at that point they would be subjected to as a resource. So that's important to know. And the great thing that we've heard of people. And actually, we did a little one-question survey to everybody that had that opened Able United account over the last year to kind of say, hey, were the stimulus funds the primary reason for you opening an Able account, or kind of led to that decision? And we saw about 20% of people responded saying, yes, stimulus funds was one of the primary drivers for us opening an Able account. And I know I've worked with several agencies. I actually worked with the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, the Sunland campus over there in Marianna, to help about 50, 60 of their individuals, which were in a situation where they received stimulus funds from last year. They haven't been able to spend it because the economy was, for some parts were closed down, so you really couldn't go out and spend money. And so they need a place to park those funds so they can keep their Medicaid eligibility and keep their services from APD. And so they were able to establish an Able account and do that. So some great people over there in Sunland. So good questions here. I'm just looking through. We are getting a bunch in there. And just as a reminder, if you have questions as it relates to Medicaid iBudget waiver or Social Security, please use that Q&A box. So here's one of the questions I have. How does saving income from work into an Able account affect their waiver eligibility, and how much can they save on an annual basis? Is this the Able to Work program? So I'll answer some of that, but I'll open the floor for others to join as well. And we talked about it earlier. Earned income into an Able account still counts as earned income for Medicaid or any other mean tested program, whether that be Social Security or HUD housing. What Able to Work is it says that individuals who are working and are not saving for retirement through a work sponsored program or on their own can contribute funds into an Able account above that $15,000 annual contribution limit. And also, it might have the benefit of taking advantage of the Savers Credit. So they could utilize the Able account basically as their retirement account. And something that Lorena and I discussed a few weeks back, or probably a couple months now, and time flies, that I was not aware of, that of legislation that passed here in the state called the Persons Working with Disabilities, that kind of provides some additional resources to allow individuals to earn a little bit more, even if they're on iBudget waiver. Can you, Lorena, I don't want to put you too much on the spotlight, but can you give us a little bit more information about that?
Well, you put me on the spot, but I think that would be great information to get out to this group. So we should touch base and try to share some information.
Yeah, we'll make sure. I'm looking at some of our groups here and saying, hey, we need to add that. There's like a 1 or 2 page sheet that I know ACA together with Department of Children and Families put together that kind of highlights it. But it's pretty exciting because it allows individuals that are on iBudget or long-term care to work more without impacting their Medicaid, which is really good. I know one of our brand ambassadors for Able, who is a quadriplegic, is looking to earn more, but he was, what was restricting him was he needed daily care. And I think he's a realtor. And so now, he was very restrictive on, I'm only going to get, $400 or $500 from this real estate transaction because he did, he couldn't lose his Medicaid because he depended on it for daily care. But now I believe he can earn more than that. So that's pretty cool. Looking through some of the questions here. So back to you, Joel, on DAC benefits. What if the parent does not have a disability? Would the child be eligible for DAC benefits?
We're talking about DAC benefits. The parent has to be entitled to benefits. When we're talking about a life case, retirement, disability, the parent has to be entitled in order for the child to be eligible to even file as a disabled adult child. Now, when we're talking about a death case or a survivor case, the parent is no longer there, and the child could file as a survivor disabled adult child. So the parent has to be receiving benefits. Does not have to be disability, it could be retirement.
And just as a reminder, what are those age ranges for retirement, Joel?
Well, for retirement is 62 is the minimum age. There's a full retirement age that is based on your year of birth. You can find it online based on your year, but individuals like myself is the age of 67. So prior to 54 is 62 and 2 months, and then the different age groups based on your year of birth.
All right. Well, that is awesome. Just looking through some of the additional questions we have. All right. I have a child that has Down syndrome, and because of my income, he did not qualify for SSI. And we talked a little bit about this, about them becoming an adult. But it says, now that I'm about to retire and my income will less, would he qualify for SSI payments or SSDI payments?
Now that the individual has retired, remember, the application is going to inquire as to income and resources. If the child is still under the age of 18, they're going to look at the income for the parents. If that income is above the income limit for SSI, then the child still wouldn't be eligible, regardless of where the benefits or the funds come from. If they are counted as income, it's going to go against the child. And I want to take advantage and correct something. I said 1954 because I'm thinking about the people who are eligible for full retirement age at 66. So it goes from 1954, 66 years, 55, 56, 57, all the way to 59. It goes up every 2 months, 66 and 2 months, 66 and 4 months. After 1960, everybody is at the age of 67.
All right, that's good to know. 30 more years. All right, I can do it. Hopefully. So just looking through some of these questions, I know we're getting close to wrapping up here, and I just wanted to open the floor for both of you for any kind of last minute thoughts or questions that you frequently hear when it relates to ABLE accounts. But just want to start with you, Lorena, just thinking about, I know you've been a great advocate, a great resource there at APD for just a few years. But just want to open the floor on just any last minute thoughts when it comes to iBudget waiver or ABLE accounts, and just give you the floor.
Sure, thank you. Again, I think making choices and having the flexibility to purchase supports and services that are tailored to an individual's preferences and lifestyle greatly improves the quality of life for people with developmental disabilities. And so to that end, I would say that, you don't have to just stick with the one program. There's a lot of ways that an individual can expand the services and supports that they're getting. And of course, the ABLE account is one way people can do that. So I just, I think it's good to have an open mind about things like that in terms of choice. I also wanted to mention, if you have a developmental disability and you're not already connected with APD, I really do encourage you to visit our website at apdcares.org. Also, even if it's not a developmental disability, we have a resource directory on our website where you can search for different resources in your communities based on your needs. So feel free to check that out. And again, we really appreciate being invited to be here today.
Thank you so much, Lorena, and we appreciate you being here as well. Joel, turning it over to you for final thoughts.
The most important thing to all our listeners this morning is don't limit yourselves to asking each other or asking your neighbor, We have a wealth of resources available to you on our website. We also have customer service representatives that are willing and able to answer all your questions about the ABLE account. So when you have questions as to whether or not you're eligible, as to what a qualified disability expense is, whatever questions regarding the ABLE account or the Social Security program, go ahead, give us a call, visit us online. We have the frequently asked questions that you can go in by topic and get your responses to. Two very important things. If you have not done so, open a MySSA account. You're going to get a lot more benefits doing it that way. And second of all, watch out for the phone scams. We get those every day. We get those robocalls telling us that your Social Security has been suspended, has been limited, has been fraudulently used. The Social Security does not conduct business that way. And just to resume it that way. So go ahead and give us a call. You can report those kind of calls also. Overall, I really want to thank you guys for having me here today. As Lorena said, this is an opportunity, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joel. Thank you, Lorena, for taking some of your morning on a Saturday to talk to a pretty good sized group here about ABLE accounts and public benefits, specifically iBudget, Waiver, and Social Security. So thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. We appreciate you all. For those who have asked questions and we weren't able to get back to you, hopefully we will do our best to reach out to you in the next few weeks with answers to those questions. And as always, this will be recorded and we will be sharing this on our YouTube page. Also, for those that registered, we will be sending out a document afterwards with some key takeaways from this event, including the presentations that you've seen today. And I'll make sure we work with our group to get that additional persons working with disabilities information attached to that as well. But thank you all and stay tuned. In about 10 minutes or so, we're going to be joined with Michelle Kinney to talk about guardianship. So we'll give you all about 10 minutes or so. And thank you again, Lorena and Joel. Until then, we'll be back in 10. Thank you.